Hello, and welcome to this edition of the Manatee Glens Report. I'm Mary Ruiz, President and CEO of Manatee Glens, the leading specialty hospital and outpatient practice for mental health and addictions in our area. Today on the show, we're talking about sexual assault and a strategic partnership we formed to help victims. 1 out of 4 women and 1 out of 6 men will experience the trauma of sexual assault at some time in their lives. Unaddressed, this can lead to mental health problems, difficulties in relationships, and addictions. That's why Manatee Glens is stepping in to offer help to men and women, boys and girls. First, I want to welcome Kathy Wilson. She's the Manatee Glens Assistant Director of Children's Outpatient Services, and she's here to talk about the SANE Center. Thank you, Kathy, for coming today. Also joining us today is Ashley Eubanks, Manatee Glens Victim Advocate. And I want to thank you both for appearing on the show. Ashley, I have to ask, what is a victim advocate?
A victim advocate is usually one of the first respondents when we hear of a sexual assault. We are the supporters of the victim during all and any stages of the sexual assault, whether it's the beginning when the assault first happens or whether it's the end when they're going through trial. We're there to guide them and give them the correct information and kind of just be that support that they need and guidance through the whole ordeal.
That sounds like a wonderful support for survivors of rape. And you respond to the emergency rooms?
Yes, we respond to the emergency room. We also respond to other agencies such as Manatee Children's Services. And sometimes we even respond to counselors. Sometimes they will hear that a child had just disclosed that they had been assaulted and they just need some help in knowing what to do next. And so we also respond to other counselors and again, other agencies.
At the end of the show, we're going to have the phone number for the Manatee Glens Rape Crisis Hotline. How does that hotline work?
It is a 24-hour hotline, so after 5 o'clock we're there, early 1 o'clock in the morning at any time.
Maybe earlier this morning you were there.
Earlier this morning, yes. And I always tell people, feel free to call. There's no question that's embarrassing that we can't answer. We're there to help you. Our doors are always open. So when they give the number, feel free to call.
And the wonderful thing is there's no charge for victim advocacy services. So that's wonderful. So Kathy, you've been working hard with a whole group of people in the community, hospitals, law enforcement, agencies. It's called the SART team. Tell us what the SART team is, and then we'll talk about the work that they've accomplished together by opening the SANE Center.
Certainly. About January of 2008, we finally got together our first meeting of the SART committee, which is the Sexual Assault Response Team. And like you said, it consists of law enforcement agencies, hospitals, state attorney's office, victim advocates, volunteers, anyone who is integral in the victim role and what's going on with them as when they go through a sexual assault. So anyone that deals with sexual assault at all gets together in this meeting.
And you know what I find remarkable, and I hope that survivors of rape find this very comforting, all of these people got together with the sole purpose of offering better support for victims and survivors of rape. I think that's a wonderful commendation for all of our first responders. So what happened from there?
Well, from there we met for a couple years, and during that time we'd get together and talk about issues. We talk about cases, what went right, what might have gone better if we did it one way or another.
You even did a secret shopper.
Yes, we did. We did.
So tell us about how the emergency rooms participated in that.
This was a great thing. We had a victim, a survivor, so to speak. They moved into the survivorhood. She was willing to go to the hospitals. She had been at a SANE center, which is a sexual assault nurse examiner center, when she had her rape exam done, and was able to offer us some insight on what happened in her mind, what was going through her emotionally, physically, and was able to walk through the ERs in our county and tell each of the ER directors and nurses how people feel when they go into an ER situation, having to have an exam done. We just looked at the simple things, the bed, the color of the room, just all sorts of things that would help trauma victims deal with their trauma better. And from there, it became an initiative for all the hospitals to really get on board and change the processes that they were making our victims go through to make it easier for them. And they did that. They stepped up to that challenge.
And which hospitals participated?
Manatee Memorial, Blake Medical Center, and also Lakewood Ranch.
Wonderful. And those are the same places you go in the middle of the night
Yes.
to comfort a rape victim. Ashley, what are the main things that you do to help someone move from being a victim to a survivor?
One of the main things that I do, I make sure that they have the correct referrals and resources. As far as, going out to them, hearing exactly what they need, hearing what challenges they're having, so that I can make the appropriate, referral, whether it's for counseling, whether it's to law enforcement, and just basically just hearing the things that are necessary so they can deal with it and learn how to cope with what they're going through.
Yeah, I think it's important to mention that most people know their attacker.
Yes.
Right? So that must make it all the more difficult.
Yes, it is. And it makes it difficult because they ask that question. And they say, well, what is the percentage? And, sometimes when I say usually 80% of the time it's someone who you know. And then they're surprised. And it is, you have to kind of teach your kids or those around you, safety and good touch and bad touch, so they can be aware of everyone, not just strangers. We always talk about stranger danger, but they have to learn how to deal with everyone that's in their environment.
And stick up for themselves.
Yes, most definitely.
But a rape victim doesn't have to report the crime to law enforcement to be able to benefit from your services, right?
No, they don't if they are over the age of 18. There are some classes such as minors, elders, and those with mental disabilities, and I myself as a mandated reporter, I have to report those. But if you are over the age of 18, you don't have to report. That's your choice. And I'm there to support you through whatever you decide to do. I just want to make sure that they have the best mental health and they can take care of themselves and they learn how to cope with the issues at hand.
What happens when a victim goes to the emergency room? What do they experience?
Usually when a victim goes to the emergency room, of course, they have to go through triage.
Make sure they're not injured or
harmed. Make sure they're not injured. Sometimes that wait can be a little lengthy.
Maybe 2 to 4 hours?
2 to 4 hours, wait for law enforcement to come in, grab the nurse's attention for some things, and they're afraid at that time. And
probably in shock too.
Yeah, very in shock, afraid, don't know what to do, confused, and sometimes it can get aggravating because you get there at 6 in the morning and you're there till almost 6 in the evening to get an exam that you don't really know what they're doing. And can sometimes even be very awkward and an intimate position for them. And so it can...
Especially after a sexual assault.
Especially after a sexual assault.
So Kathy, the SART team was aware of these difficulties for victims of rape, and they decided to do something pretty big. So tell us about the SANE Center.
Well, during the course of having the SART meet on a monthly basis and having such great people involved, we started talking about the need for a SANE center, a sexual assault nurse examiner center in our county, and how well it would benefit everyone. Obviously, we're victim-centered at Manatee Glens, and that's what we most care about. But we also know that there's other issues. Law enforcement can't be out on one call for 8 hours at a time. They're there to serve the whole public and safety for the whole public. And ERs are really not always equipped to do the type of special exam.
And their job is to save lives.
Exactly.
I mean, people are walking in with heart attacks and strokes and
gunshot
accidents.
wounds and all sorts of things, yes. So they're not equipped, and they were very on board with having a place where victims could go that is homey, that feels like they're not being under a microscope, that they feel that they can trust people again. I mean, this is something where trust is really taken from you. So somewhere that they feel a lot more comfortable and not put on the spot. Not that any one of these agencies were doing that before, but just the reality of it. So we got together and we talked, and we had someone step forward in our community, Planned Parenthood of Southwest and Central Florida.
Right.
They stepped forward and really were on board because, as we know, a lot more sexual assaults happen to women. Men are also served through our services and through the SANE, but generally women do have the bulk of the rapes and sexual assaults that happen. And Planned Parenthood is there for families and for women. They're there for women's issues. They're there for to help. And they thought it was just a natural partnership for them to step forward and look and see how they could help with the SANE. And that's how it came about.
So what services are offered at the SANE Center?
Basically, the main service is that forensic exam and what goes with that forensic exam, which is a lot more complex. What we offer is a place for the victim to go to get their forensic exam, to have the interview with the nurse, to be able to have that forensic exam done, and then also speak to law enforcement there where it's more comfortable setting. Advocacy, that's available there. So everything is done in one time in one space, and it's ended up really costing us a lot less time and the victim a lot less time.
So what would be the average length of time in experiencing a forensic exam at a SANE Center versus an emergency room, say?
I would say, and Ashley can definitely include in this, the ones I've been on, doing about 2 hours at the SANE, in regards to about 4 to 6 to 8 hours at the ER. So you're looking at less than double or even triple the time.
So the SANE Center is better for the victim. It spares the emergency room from being distracted from its main mission, which is saving lives.
Yes.
And law enforcement must be happy about being on the road again.
They are very happy. I have to say, I saw Sheriff Stubbe last night, and he mentioned the SANE Center to me and said how great it is working out for them. So I really think in all, it's a win-win for everybody, which is always a great thing to be a part of.
So how does a person access those services, Ashley?
They have that 24-hour hotline they can call into, and most definitely one of the advocates will answer the phone, and we can tell them exactly what to do if they are a victim of sexual assault. Also, local law enforcement, through the SART team and everything that Ms. Kathy has done, she's made all the agencies very aware of the number to call and who to get in contact with if someone has an incident of sexual assault.
Wonderful. As a clinician, Kathy, could you talk about a little bit what emotional processes someone goes through after a sexual assault?
Well, there's it mimics much like grieving process. I mean, you're dealing with someone that's, like we said before, in shock. A lot of times they're grieving a relationship lost, especially if it's someone they knew and trusted before. So they're in shock. They're a lot of time with rape and sexual assault, which is different from other things that happen to people, is that they feel that they're at fault.
How does that happen?
Well, I think in society we do this to people. I mean, you think about the thing, how we deal with things in our communities. We always want to find someone at fault. There's always that person we need to label at fault, and so a lot of times. Not on purpose, but our community likes to say, well, why were they there? What were they doing? Couldn't they just say no? And so those questions, even though they're meant to help the victim, they're really hurting the victim by making them feel shameful, making them feel guilty. And in cases where there's children, they're never at fault. I mean, children are precious commodities that we're supposed to take care of. And with adults even, they go out on a date. They expect to be treated with respect. They don't expect to be raped or sexually assaulted if they tell them they don't want to have sex. So a lot of times we question our victims about maybe where they were, what they were doing. In
She
reality,
was wearing something too low cut, or
right, or they had a drink 2 hours earlier. I mean, those things are not important. What's important is someone took something from them, and they aren't at fault. They're never at fault. And that's what we do at Manatee Glens. The Rape Crisis Center is very victim-centered. We are only there to tell that victim that they didn't deserve that. It is not their fault. So they can move on with their life, become a survivor, and be able to live a healthy life.
we talked about some of the things that can happen if you don't deal with your feelings.
Yes.
So can you tell us how Manatee Glens helps people move past those risks and dangers?
The counseling is a huge part of it. Advocacy helps with that crisis intervention piece, really links them to the referrals they need. But the counseling piece is really a great piece to have, and for those victims to be able to take on and work through their feelings. Because a lot of times victims, like other people in society, we turn to things that are maybe not healthy to deal with our trauma or whatever we're feeling. So alcohol and drugs is a huge issue.
Trying to maybe blunt our feelings.
Yes, yeah, feel like that it's not them. They're trying to drown out what they're really feeling. And so by therapy, what I mean is you're able to talk about it. You're able to put a voice to your feelings, talk about your feelings, and it goes a long way in maybe creating more healthy ways of coping. So that's what we really want to do, is make sure people are coping in a healthy way and not in an unhealthy way, which leads to more problems.
So is there an element of trauma and post-traumatic syndrome?
Oh, definitely.
For victims of rape?
Yes. What we've found over the years as counselors is that the quicker that a client gets in to see us and deals with what's happened to them, especially with children, the resiliency rate is very high. So we don't see the actual diagnoses of post-traumatic stress syndrome, anxiety disorders, things like that, when someone gets to us as soon as they can and talks about what they're going through, because they're going to get that support on the other end, and they're not going to internalize those feelings. The longer they wait, sometimes you will see those things happen, and we can still help. I mean, all these disorders we talk about, all the things that we're talking about, they're all very treatable, very treatable. All they have to do is reach out, and we are there to help them through that.
And so, Ashley, in your experience, are survivors stronger?
Yes, they are. And again, just by being one of those responders at the beginning and kind of seeing them go through that transition from, being devastated and then wanting to go on stand and tell their story and tell how it has impacted their lives, that's empowering them.
They're also protecting other women.
Yes, and they're protecting other women. So they are stronger, and they feel as if they have a voice, and they want to help. They want to stop things like sexual assault from happening to other people. So they feel as if they play a part in society and helping other victims become survivors.
Let's talk about the wonderful nurses in this community that have taken the sexual assault nurse examiner training. It was under a grant funded by the workforce.
Suncoast Workforce.
Yeah. How many nurses participated?
Well, we have now trained about 27 nurses, but the first go around we had about 15, 16 nurses trained through that Suncoast Workforce grant. There was a ER director from Blake on our SART team. He was really appalled to hear what was going on, and it was like, I just can't believe this is going on in our community, that I need to sit on a committee like this. He was just very, very drawn to it. He had a wife and kids, and he's like, I just don't want this happening in my community. We have to do something better. And he was on the Suncoast Workforce Committee and found some funding for us. So we were able to not only pay for the nurses to go through the training, but also pay their salaries while they were away from work. So that was a great thing.
And these were nurses from Manatee Memorial, Blake,
everywhere.
Manatee Glens, all different.
Yes, yes. And all we really asked for was a commitment that they wanted to do it for the right reasons. They had that passion to help people, one. And of course, they're nurses already, so we hope they already had that. And then also that they would be willing to carry through the process of getting certified so that they could actually see clients at the SANE. And so we're still working on that part of the process, but we have already seen about 15 to 16 cases at the SANE, and it's working out very well.
So it opened on February 6th at
Yes.
Planned Parenthood and in Manatee County off of State Road 70,
Yes.
53rd Avenue for some people. And the nurses, of course, understand the process of what a victim is going through, but they also help law enforcement and the state's attorney's office with convictions.
Yes.
How does that work?
Well, with a SANE exam, what's really I've found is very interesting is because I've actually been there and watched them go through it. The nurse will sit down with the victim and have them tell what happened in their own words, and along the way they'll ask a couple questions, and that's really getting a baseline of what they need to look for when they get into the forensic exam. So they have that time to do that, and then they go into the forensic exam where an actual pelvic is done, pictures are taken, swabs are taken, anything that if the client said, you know, she was dragged across the floor, she was hit, we'll look at where, we'll take pictures. So it's a lot more in depth than just having an exam done in the ER.
Right.
So they're really helping law enforcement by painting that picture that the victim's already told to law enforcement, and now they're painting that picture and getting evidence from that. Then that kit is sealed up, taken by law enforcement. They do their investigation, and it's moved on to the state attorney phase, where they decide whether or not it's a prosecutable case. There's been statistics to show that in SANE cases where we have SANE exam done, it raises the probability of a prosecutable case by 150%.
That's incredible.
It's incredible.
And that makes us all safer.
Yes.
So congratulations to those nurses for their community interest in helping us all.
Yes.
So what have the reactions been to from the victims of the SANE Center?
Their reactions, they really appreciate it. They are so happy to hear that there's somewhere in the community that they can go to if they hear about a sexual assault. And in that case, you know, that's not something that you go in if you have a cold, so you don't go very often. So when they first get there, of course, they're like, oh, I didn't know something like this existed. How did this come about? This is great. And they really appreciate it. And then they feel as if it's a comfortable place. It's more intimate because you have to go into details of some very personal things, and they appreciate that they have that support and that one-on-one with the nurse who has their undivided attention.
Wonderful. What a wonderful collaboration in our community. You know, we've mentioned men and children, and I wanted to talk a little bit more about that. It must be very hard for men to disclose that they've been sexually assaulted, because now your manhood has been also assaulted, and are they perhaps a little more reluctant to disclose?
Yes. I mean, we go through stages in rape crisis where we get men, and all of a sudden we have several cases of going on with men. A lot of times we don't hear about cases where men are involved until way afterwards. And of course, there's criteria for SANE exams. We don't do them past 5 days
because
of the assault.
there's no evidence left.
Exactly. So a lot of times with men, we don't hear until later, but we do offer them the same services if they want to report still. We offer them victim advocacy. We offer them therapy. Now with boys, it's different. Obviously, we talked about the mandated reporting. If a boy discloses that something happened and it was within the time frame, we would definitely treat them like we would any other victim. Children in general are treated a lot differently in this county because of the Children Advocacy Center. We want to make sure we don't re-traumatize children by doing the exam and whatnot, but we treat them the same. It is hard. I think as children it's a little easier because they don't have that feeling yet that they're different and that they can't tell. And I think that's why they're so resilient, and that's why kids can do so much better if they're told and get the right treatment.
And the SANE Center can accept kids 13 and older.
Yes.
Where do kids who are younger go?
They go to Manatee Children's Services through their Child Advocacy Center. They have a SCAN program there that they work directly with law enforcement and the state attorney's office, and they've come up with this kind of same way of dealing with cases where they get everybody there at once. They try to do everything at once for the child so that they're not bringing them back and forth and re-traumatizing. So we have a great relationship with them. We call them, make sure law enforcement calls them, and we're involved in those cases as well.
We're almost out of time. We had so much information to convey. I think people who face sexual assault should be very reassured that there are people in this community who care deeply for them, who will come out in the middle of the night to support them, and who will see them through court cases and counseling and all of their needs. So thank you both for appearing on the show, Kathy and Ashley. There is hope for sexual assault victims. Here's the number for the Rape Crisis Hotline: 941-708-6059. Someone is there 24 hours a day and is ready to help. That wraps up another edition of the Manatee Glens Report. Thank you both again for appearing on the show. We appreciate what you're doing for the community, and we hope that our audience now has a better understanding of where victims of sexual assault can get help. Thank you, our audience, for tuning in to the Manatee Glens Report here on METV, where you can learn something new every day. We'll see you next time.